Hello everyone! I wanted to make another video about my experience teaching in London because in my last video I briefly spoke about what my experience was like being a supply teacher and also having a full-time job teaching in London. But in this video I want to go more into detail about my journey as well being a supply teacher and how I got started, and also why I switched agencies a few different times because that did happen. So to start off with, when I was applying from Canada, I applied with a teaching agency called Engage Education. Engage Education had decent reviews online, and also I had a friend who was working there. And they were mainly based in West London, and when I first started out, it wasn't too bad. They did only guarantee 4 out of 5 days of work, and again, guarantee means that if you are not called for 4 days of work, so if they do not have work for you for 4 days, they will still pay you for the 4 days of work. So they did not guarantee 5 days of work, and later on I'll speak about my experience with an agency that did give me guaranteed 5 days of work. So this agency, Engage Education, they usually gave me 4 to 5 days of work, so that was not too much of a problem. The schools in the West End, they were actually pretty nice, the actual schools themselves, but just like the rest of London, I did find that a lot of the behaviors in a lot of the schools, they were very challenging. Even when I was at schools that they seem very like outstanding, reputable schools, again, you're a supply teacher, so it's tough. So I don't want to pretend that, everything is amazing about it, because it is. I mean, you are getting paid a decent amount. I think I was getting paid around 100. With that agency, it could have been around 125 pounds per day, so that was pretty decent. But again, yeah, I was only with that agency for so I moved there in April. So I was there with that agency for about 4 months, because I did move in April, which I know is a little bit of a strange time to move to a country when their school year ends in August, but in my mind I thought, why not? Why not? Because at the time I was at home and I was struggling with work, so I made the move then. And it was still possible for me to travel in the summertime, but I'll explain what I did do in order to travel that summer when I first moved there. So yes, my first agency was with Engage Education. I wouldn't say they were amazing by any means. I didn't really have any major issues with them, but I wanted something better. That was my experience. That summer, what I decided to do, I decided to be an au pair in Spain, because it just felt like the right thing to do at the time. I thought it would be a really cool experience. I also did not have much money saved up at the time. I had to spend a lot of money to actually get settled in the beginning, so I was an I was an au pair, an au pair in Spain for 1 month. I lived with a family. I'll make another video explaining my whole experience there, but I don't know if I would do it again, but it got me by, and I was able to do some more travels after that, so that was nice. So once I got back from my travels in the summertime, me and my friend moved to a house in North London. This was a house with, there were 6 of us girls all together, which, it's a lot of people in the house, but also on the upside, you're never bored, there's always people around, and it was really fun. And a lot of us, like I said in the last video, we were pretty close, so we would go out a lot of the time together. And when I first when I moved to that area, we looked up a really good teaching agency called Redbox Agency, and Redbox they were really, really great. They paid about, I think it was £135 or £130 per day. I forget the exact number, but it was something around that. So it was more than the last agency. Redbox agency were nothing but amazing the whole time. The one downside for me was that since I was living in North London, most of their schools were located in East London, and it took me around at least an hour to get to every single school or more. So that was not ideal, but it was still okay because I would take the tube in the morning. Sometimes they would actually call me the day before, or actually with this agency, they would just send a text. So they'd send a text the night before telling me to confirm the school that they were interested in me working at, and I would confirm, or if I didn't want to work that day, then I would reject it. And yeah, a lot of the time they sent me back to schools that liked me. So the school, I guess, would say, oh, can Nicole work here? So they would say to me, oh, can you work at the school for the next week or for the next 2 weeks? I think the longest amount of time that a school wanted me back was for about 1 month or even longer. I mean, at the time I was not looking for any full-time work, so I was not interested in doing planning and all the extra hours. So a lot of the time I would say, no, I don't want to start planning and work there permanently, even though there were some really good schools that I probably would have enjoyed working at. Well, who knows, it would be different actually working there full time, but the schools at the time did seem decent. So yes, I was working there for a really long time, and then there were no issues at all. Everyone was really kind. They actually had a get-together with all the people who are working for that agency, and that was really nice. I think it was a dinner, some barbecue that we had right when we started working, so that was great. And after that, my friend who was living in the house, she was working for another agency called Teach Now, and Teach Now paid the same amount. They guaranteed 5 days of work, but they were in North London, so I thought, oh, this is great. I'll switch agencies. It was nothing against Redbox. It was just because it was easier for me to work in North London. So I did switch agencies, and I had the experience of working around like Camden area, sometimes around Finsbury Park. A lot of the time it was really close by, so that was great, and really cool areas. Like when I was working in Camden, I was working in, and if you don't know too much about Camden, it's like really artsy, really fun. There's a really big market, and it's just like a funky place to be around. So that was really cool. Yeah, so I was working there for a little while. They kept on asking me back. And then eventually they found me, because at the time, so this was my issue. My visa was was close to expiring. Like, this is after my time working at Redbox and then Teach Now. So after it was coming up closer, it was probably, I was working already a year and a half in London at this point, and with Teach Now, I told them, I said, because my visa is about to expire, I knew, and I researched this, the only way I could stay and work in London is if I was sponsored. So pretty much what that means is a school needs to sponsor your visa for work. So it's very difficult to find in London. In my case, it was not easy to find because I tried to go through originally I asked Redbox, and Redbox said there was nothing they could do. They didn't associate with any schools who would be willing to sponsor. Then with Teach Now, I asked them about that, and they said there was a school, but this school, there was a school that was interested in possibly sponsoring my visa. And again, I keep on saying this, but I'll talk more later on, more into detail about how I actually did get sponsored. It isn't about the school that I'm about to talk about, but it's with a different school. So yes, this school that Teach Now said could potentially sponsor, they were really far away from my house. I think it was around almost like an hour and a half away, and it was just one long bus ride, and it took so long. And anyway, so I started working there, and I was working there I think almost like 2 months, and I kept on asking the agency. I said they still have not approached me, they haven't said anything about sponsoring me, because I was on a deadline and I really had to get this set up, otherwise there'd be no option for me to stay in the country, and I wouldn't be able to teach there anymore. So they said, oh, don't worry, like, they'll talk to you soon, but the head teacher at the school never did. He passed by me, didn't say a word, and he was, like, a very intimidating person, so I didn't really want to go up to him and ask him, because I had my agency, conversing with him, so I kept on waiting and waiting and waiting. Nothing, did not say anything. And at this point I thought, well, maybe they're not interested. And also the school was very far. There were a few other things that I didn't love about the school, so in the end I told the agency I was not interested in working at the school anymore. I was going to take the matter into my own hands and work somewhere else. I'm not going to say exactly the words that were said, but in a nutshell, they were very angry that I was leaving the school just because I told them I was going to work until a certain date, but in the end, they also told me that sponsorship was very, very likely, and then I heard nothing. So, that agency that I was applying for, they said in so many words that they did not want to keep me on guaranteed pay for supply. So I said, okay, well, that's fine, because there really are so many agencies out there. I called back Redbox and I asked them would they be willing to have me back and put me back on their supply list, and they said yes, of course. So I was done working at Teach Now. I was back with Redbox, who were super reliable, amazing, super nice, and then I started supplying again with Redbox, just for because I had to figure out a plan. I needed some sort of plan. I was taking it into my own hands to get the sponsorship for this tier 2 visa, because I was on the tier 5 visa since I'm Canadian, and it's for 2 years, and in order to get a tier 2 visa you need to be sponsored by a school. So I started working for Redbox again, and I was working in the East End in London, and it was fine, but I was getting a little stressed because my time was running up. So what I decided to do was call all sorts of agencies, look online by myself. The applications were really lengthy if you're looking like to apply for a job without an agency, so I was still willing to do the applications, but I was hoping that I could look through a different agency that could help me out. I found this, it was just totally random, this agency that I contacted. They weren't reputable by any means. They were called Hays, so they're Hays, Hays, Hays Teaching Agency, and this woman who was helping me, who saw my application or saw my email, told me to come to their office, which was located, it was like central London, so I went down there, and she asked me what I was interested in. It was really weird though, because when I had the interview, she brought someone else in, and they were asking, well, originally she asked me what I'm interested in. I said sponsorship, I want to stay in London, I'll take a full-time job. And then she brought someone else in and was like, oh, are you willing to teach overseas somewhere else? And I was like, what? Like, this is not what I was saying remotely. So I kind of had a weird feeling from the start, but anyway, she told me she would contact me. I filled out some information, and I was just going to wait and see. I was really like, whatever comes up, comes up. So I think it was a couple weeks later, she contacted me and said there was a school that was interested and they were willing to sponsor. So she told me about that. It was like the next day that she wanted me to have the interview, and I whipped together, it was 2 lessons. One was a math lesson and one was a English lesson, and I asked them what it had to be on, and they said really anything you like. So I did, like, I remember it was the past tense for the English lesson, and for math, I don't know, math was not the best lesson, but again, it was kind of last minute. So the next day I went for my interview. I remember I got lost trying to find the school, and eventually I found the school, I had my interview, all went well, and they said I had the job. So I was thrilled. I was so happy. I did work at this school. I ended up working at that school for about a year and a half. So that was, or maybe actually it was a little longer than that. So I worked at the school for quite some time. But I do have to say that agency was horrible. They, to get like references, there were so many hoops I had to jump through with that agency. Like their customer service was beyond horrible, and we got into many arguments over the phone, and it was just ridiculous. Even the school that I was at said, I can't believe the agency are acting like this. They were not good by any means, but the one thing I really appreciate is that they did find me the school, and they were able to find a school that could sponsor me. Would I ever supply for that agency? Not a chance. Would I work for a full-time job through that agency? Not a chance. It was just to find this job. So that was my journey, and in the end, I mean, it wasn't the easiest, but I was able to do it. I'm sure some of you are wondering how you go through the process of getting sponsored through the school. What did I have to do? So I'll make another video about that, because otherwise this one will be very long, and I'll talk about how that happened, how I was able to get the other visa. So all in all, it was a learning experience. I will say again, Redbox Agency was amazing, located in the East London. Most agencies, I do have to say, like, do expect you to at least travel up to 1 hour. Sometimes with Redbox it was a little over an hour, but I was still willing to do that. So that was no problem if that meant I was getting work. Yeah, so just what I could say is do your research, see what's best for you, and if you can, really ask for an agency, or ask the agency if they guarantee 5 days of work, because that gives you the security, and that means that usually they'll try and find you work for 5 days. They won't just not call you, because again, you're paying for rent, you're paying for your phone, you want to travel, so you do want that income coming in, you do want to go to work so you can save up that money. Yeah, so that's about it. I hope this was helpful, and if you have any questions, again, you can comment below, and yeah, I'll be making